I think it's clearer on the other side though. Good. All right, we're streaming and we are also live. Okay. All right, can everybody see me?
Yep.
All
Yes,
right, good
ma'am.
morning, everyone. Come on, Maria. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Oluwatosin Olakaye, aka Anyobere, the mother drum of Africa. I'm a singer-songwriter. I'm a certified addiction mental health counselor. I'm here today. We want to thank you all for staying tuned with us. Today is another amazing time. This is the January edition of Break the Silence, Break the Stigma Roundtable Discussion. I have with me today on the program, Dr. AZA. Dr. AZA, you want to say hello to your people? This is the second time you're coming on the program. Hi, Dr. AZA.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I'm a physician scientist, so my training is in neuroscience. That's what I did my PhD in, and I'm currently a resident in the psychiatry department here at Yale. But in addition to that, and equally as important, I'm a musician and an artist. I produce and sing, songwrite, um, and have really used music even in my own life as a form of therapy, catharsis, and have dealt with my own mental health struggles in a way that involves music. And we'll talk about mindfulness as well, which has also emerged as a really, really important part of what I do, and I think really should be an important part of everyone's life in one way or another. And so those are the things that I really spend my time doing. Operating as a physician scientist, operating as an artist, and then as a mindfulness coach, and really trying to bring all of those things together to create healing spaces, particularly from communities that are marginalized and that don't have access to a lot of the resources in the system. And when they do have access, really are trying to operate a system that wasn't designed to enable their wellness. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about this topic.
We are really glad to have you, Dr. AZA. Also joining us on the program today is Maria Cepeda. I hope I pronounced that well. Maria, you want to say hello to your people? Hi, Maria.
Hi, Tosin. How
All
are
right, introduce
you?
yourself.
I'm happy
Introduce
to be
yourself.
here. Yeah, I'm happy to be here as well.
Okay.
I'm really involved in people with different mental health issues like depression, anxiety, substance abuse, severe depression, which has to do with suicide ideation and intents on wanting to hurt themselves. It seems that a lot of them seem to have like, not that I'm trying to label them or anybody, but like with the symptoms of borderline personality disorder, so which is a little bit tough to deal with. So you have to really know how to work with somebody that has those issues. It's not always easy, but you just have to know what words to use when dealing with them. So, but I'm happy to be here and I want to learn more, and I'll bring in whatever it is that I can bring in.
All right.
So thank
Thank you
you,
so
Tosin, for
much.
your invitation.
Thank you so much, Maria, for joining us. Maria is a licensed mental health counselor. All right, also joining us on the January edition of Break the Silence, Break the Stigma Roundtable Discussion is a beautiful poet. She goes by the name Natalia. Hi, Natalia.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here too. Mental health is something that is super important to me. I have a long history of family members with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. And I was kind of always the person who was there for everybody, and then it happened to me. And I went through my own depression and anxiety, and through that, poetry was just my release. It was how I understood my emotions. And I was able to find myself again through writing. And I got to this point where I started sharing it and other people were connecting with the words. So saying I feel that way, and you just put into words that emotion no one understands. So I'm excited to be able to connect with people on that level. And, the best form of healing is art. And it's also connection. because to feel like you're not alone is one of the reasons we can pull ourselves out of these moments of despair and depression. So excited. Thank you for having me. And
it's a pleasure having you all on the program today. Okay, without wasting so much of our time, the topic of discussion today is mindfulness and depression, or better still, we want to see how mindfulness can be used to manage depression. But we cannot go to mindfulness without starting with depression. What is depression? Dr. Eze, I'm going to start with you. What is depression exactly?
Yeah, I think depression is a term that people use kind of broadly, just sort of in society, to describe a range of different feelings and experiences. From a specifically speaking from like a psychiatric context, there's a DSM manual which tries to define sort of how we think about specific conditions like depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. There's certain criteria. And so if we think about depression from that standpoint, there are a number of different sort of things that we see. Usually there's disruptions in sleep, in the person's interest. There might be feelings of guilt. The way that their energy levels might be different. Their ability to concentrate, their sort of what we call psychomotor activation might be different. And then their appetite might change, and then they might have suicidal ideation. That is also goes along with sort of a depressed move or having like a negative emotional state, and so and then anhedonia, which means things that are usually rewarding, they don't feel as rewarding anymore. And so usually someone has to be feeling that way at least 5 of those 7 things, and then for 2 weeks to have like a clinical diagnosis of depression. But then there are lots of other ways, things like dysthymia, and other ways of sort of experiencing really negative emotions like grief and things that may not be clinically labeled as depression, but still have, an impact on somebody's ability to function in society.
Amazing. That's a good foundation. I picked something from what you said, Dr. Eze. You said before someone can be labeled or diagnosed with either depression, any of those depression, which means that person must have about 5 to 7 out of those problems, like symptoms. Is that what you're talking about? Then we're talking about DSM-5. Can you explain better for us, please?
Yeah, so the DSM is essentially a document. It's called a manual that essentially tries to define how we think about specific clinical conditions. And it's definitely not a perfect document. It's always being sort of revised. A lot of psychiatrists sort of get together and talk through the things that they see in patients and then try to really define it. It's a little bit different from other fields of medicine, right? Like if you go to your cardiologist with chest pain, you get an EKG, they'll take some cardiac enzymes, they might do a chest x-ray. So there's a lot of like sort of objective data that people can use to say, yes, you're having a heart attack, or no, this is just heartburn, or no, this is a panic attack. In psychiatry, it's a little bit different because there's no specific test that I can draw from your blood that tells me you have bipolar or you have depression, right? This is something now where there's a lot of research that's trying to get us to that point. But the way that the field started, it was all based on people's sort of description of something that they're experiencing, right? And so when someone comes into the clinic, I'm going to ask them a number of questions. And again, for me to say this person has major depressive disorder, they have to have 5 of those 7 features. And that has to have been going on for, at least 2 weeks. If they don't have 5 out of 7, it doesn't mean that they're not having difficulty. And we might still, admit them to the hospital. I might still start, some sort of medication to help them, or I might still say they should see a therapist, but I can't clinically diagnose them with major depression. Right. And so, there's things like adjustment disorder, for instance, whereas like some life experiences happen and now I'm having a really hard time adjusting to it. And that's a diagnosis I could get that wouldn't be major depression, but I might have some of those symptoms. And so I think, again, people in sort of in the community, we sort of just use depression as a term to mean like I'm feeling really bad or I'm feeling really down. But from a clinical standpoint, we have like very specific things that we're looking for to diagnose someone with that. But again, having a clinical diagnosis is not the same thing as saying like I'm having difficulty functioning, and there might be something that I should be able to do to help someone function better, even if they don't have a diagnosis of, major depressive disorder.
Amazing. That is really, really informative. So Maria, I'm coming to you. which means we have different kinds of depression. And of course, I'm still coming back to sadness, but can you really tell us about what kind of depressions, what are the symptoms? How do we know when we are depressed, Maria? Hi, Maria. Hello?
It looks like she might be frozen.
Oh, that could be. Can you hear me, Maria?
Now I can.
Yes,
Now
I
I can.
said, yeah, did you hear the question? I know Dr. Eze
No.
gave us a foundation about what depression is, and we talked briefly about DSM-5, how people can meet up with maybe like about 5 out of the 7 criteria before they can be diagnosed. So I want you to take us through what are the symptoms, how many kind of depressions do we have? What are the symptoms? How do we know when we're depressed anyway?
Okay, when I first started my mental health, started in this field, I remember that 4 of the questions that we always have to ask is, how is your eating pattern? Are you eating? Are you not eating anything? Are you eating too much? So, talking about that eating part of it, how's their appetite? The second one is, how is your sleeping pattern? Are you sleeping too much? Are you not sleeping at all? Or how is that sleeping pattern? The third one is your interest. How much interest or pleasure are you getting out of life? What things interest you? Sometimes there's a lot of loss of interest. The depression, how many times are you feeling depressed? Is it every day? How intense is it? How frequently is it? How long is it lasting? So we have to ask those types of questions, which is the depression, which is the frequency, duration, and intensity, the appetite, the sleeping pattern, and if there's a loss of interest, and how is it affecting that individual. So those are the 4 main ones to usually ask. And of course, there's the psychomotor, the guilt and shame, the indecision, if there's a poor self-image, or poor body image, their self-esteem. We have to ask those questions. What's the other one? And the last thing is suicidal ideation. So, and indecisive, if you're undecisive or not. But basically going also into the extreme one, which is suicidal ideation, if there's intent, plan. So we have to ask all those questions and see how intense their depression can be. Dysthymia is more like, how are you feeling? How low is your energy? There could be low energy. There could be low feelings of tiredness, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a major depressive disorder. It could just mean, this is the way I've always felt, and this is normal. So I don't know, I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but it's basically going into those questions.
Can we now say
and
we
that's
have
how you can
major
identify
depression? So there are major depression and there are some depressions that are
the
not
major
really
depression
major?
will usually have to do with the suicidal ideation. But yeah, like unspecified depression doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I wanna hurt myself, or I have these thoughts of I wanna kill myself. So unspecified, and correct me if I'm wrong, doctor.
Come on, we're sharing ideas. That's what this forum is all about. I'm just asking because,
And of course, we can have.
Go ahead, please, Marie.
I'm sorry. And we can have anxiety connected to the depression.
Okay.
So there's also the diagnosis of depression with anxiety, which a lot of people will have that, those symptoms of anxiety.
Okay. All right, that's really fantastic. Before we go on, I'm going to come to Natalia. Natalia has a poetry on depression, and as during the course of the program, she's going to share a story with us. Natalia, are you ready with us first?
Yeah. So I picked out a few pieces. The one I'm going to start with is I was feeling out where our conversation was headed. So this one's more along the lines of that intense sadness, or not sadness, but the moment of depression. So it's called Evanesce.
Happiness?
Evanesce. It means to want to disappear.
Okay.
I dream of disappearance, a beautiful Evanesce, to become a ghost of yesterday, nameless, first and last. Erase me like the chalkboard, nothing left but dust. Remnants of my presence, just a ghost of who once was. Eliminate the evidence and leave no trace behind. Dip the sponge and wash it clean, my pale faded lines. I dream of screaming rising steam, jealous of how it dissipates. I envy the ability to exist and then evaporate. To be a falling snowflake, a moment come and past. Here for just a second, and then melting in the grass, you see. I dream to simply vanish, pass out of sight immediately. This sadness is unbearable, and I face it inescapably. But with promise of tomorrow, despair can be escaped. And after this sorrow settles, I must have hope that joy awaits. So,
Wow.
yeah, so that one.
You just took me out of here. That's really amazing.
Thank you.
You want to share another one for us?
Yeah, so this next one is more along the lines related to what Maria was saying about how there is anxiety tied with depression. And this, you know, going with that is it feels like your mind is on fire in some moments. It's very scary because you don't know what's really happening to you. You don't know why you feel the way you feel. So this one's called The Monster. Oops. My chaotic mind on fire, fighting an angry beast within. There's gunshots, explosions, smoke, and dust. I fear I may not win. Twisted up in fear and shame, it fills my lungs, I choke. But something keeps me fighting against this monster I've provoked. I resist against the turmoil to its greatest satisfaction. Resistance feeds its spirit, its guilty pleasure, my reaction. My soul screams back in anguish. Please don't believe the lies. But the monster taunts and fools me. It longs for my demise. I push, I pull, I protest. It lingers in my mind, laughing at its victory, wicked, cruel, unkind. But little does this monster know, my soul is that much stronger. And every time it makes me fall, I rise again, I prosper. My truest self can conquer, logic can flood my veins, and then it loses power, and I take the reins. The smoke, it finally settles. My mind begins to clear. Monster is myself, I cry. Monster is this fear. A tear falls down my cheek, drips slowly to my chin. The inner beast has lost its grip, and I begin again. Chaos turns to silence. The battle nears its end. This monster, once an enemy, now becomes my friend. So that one was like the full circle personification of anxiety and depression as a whole, whereas like it is a battle, a constant battle with yourself, and it's a monster. But eventually through work, therapy, medicine, art, you befriend this thing that attacks you, and that's kind of at least how I pulled myself out of it. So yeah.
That is really amazing. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. All right, Dr. Eziwe, I'm coming. That was really beautiful. Dr. Ezi, this brings me back to the question. Is there a difference between being sad and depression? Is there a difference?
Yeah, there's a difference. I mean, sadness can be a part of depression, right? So part of the major criteria for depression is like you have to feel sad. If you don't feel sad, then you're not depressed. Something's going on, right? You're having difficulty functioning, but sadness and that feeling of sadness is a part of, what makes you depressed. But again, there are these other criteria that also need to be there. So I think sadness is a part of depression, but you can be sad, and not be depressed, and part of it is like sadness is like in and of itself is a very temporary emotional response to a specific event, right? So my mom died, or I lost my job, or something negative happened, and I feel sad. And, I might feel like that all day. But then tomorrow I get up and I'm like, okay, it's fine. Like, let me work with it. Or I might feel sad for a week. And, again, there's these stages of grief and all those things. But again, for depression, we're talking about 2 weeks of feeling sad along with all of these other things. So there is a distinction, but I think sadness is a part of the overall picture of depression, is just sort of much more extreme. And I find this to be the case actually in a lot of the things that we see in psychiatry, which is that what we see in psychiatry is kind of like a more extreme version of something that everyone deals with, right? So everyone feels some degree of anxiety about the future until they've gotten some sort of practices that help them escape that. Everyone feels sad at times because of things. Everyone might have like weird thoughts that they're never going to tell anybody about, but kind of bother them, right? But if you have OCD, or you have, schizophrenia, depression, or anxiety in a clinical context, you're experiencing really extreme forms of this that make it difficult for you to function. So for me, I always, as a psychiatrist, I'm thinking more about like, what is causing this person difficulty functioning in their life?
Okay.
And to me, that's really the main thing. Like when you see people who are really going to be treated in a clinical context, or are inpatient, for something, it's because they're having difficulty functioning. And so the labels, I think, we work in this academic, Western medical system that throws these labels on everything, and like there are different medications you can use depending on the labels. I think there is some utility to that, but I really try to approach things much more from a space of like, what is causing this person difficulty functioning, and how do we help them to function again?
Amazing. That is really beautiful. So which means when someone is sad, it's just temporary, but depression is something that goes longer than sadness. But, is it possible to feel sad and you think you are depressed? Or is it possible for people to be depressed and think they're sad? Is it possible, Maria? Is it possible for people to feel that they're actually depressed, but they feel they're sad? Go ahead, please.
That's a good question. Not really. Because sometimes you can feel sad and actually say, you know what, I feel sad because of this reason, or I just feel sad because maybe sometimes the day can cause you to feel some sadness. But you can, in your mind, you can say, you know what, I know that this is temporary because it's something that's causing it, whether it's the weather, whether it's something that happened. That's how I see it. That's why I've studied it. But depression goes deeper than that. It's a bit more intense because it's a feeling that you can't get out of it. It's falling into like a hole that you're attempting to get out of it, or sometimes you just stay there and just go through the motions. And I've had a lot of patients that go through that they don't say I'm sad, or they are conscious that they are depressed. They know this. Their sadness can come from a death, can come from something that has happened, but they know they can't get over it. Again, depression is so much deeper than that. And there are so many different types of depressions. Like even with bipolar disorder, you can be depressed, but then there's that moment of mania where there's an episode that you're all over the place, that you feel good, or you can feel totally angry, but then it switches to being depressed. So sometimes it could get complicated with what we believe it can be. So we got to be very careful how we even diagnose people, because it could be a misdiagnosis, and we have to know what we're doing. That's why it's so important for us to find out the history of what's going on with that person. How long has this been going on? Even when we talk about dysthymia, This time it has a lot to do with, well, I've been feeling like this for years. But that doesn't mean that that person is depressed. It just means that that person has gone through this feeling that they believe is normal. Okay, well, I've always felt like this. I have low energy. I have low self-esteem. Sometimes this is the way it's always been. It's normal. So it all depends on how we look at it and how many questions we're asking and trying to get deep into that history.
All right. Thank you so much, Maria. That's really, really interesting. So, Natalia, I want you to share with us what's the story behind that poetry. And have you ever been depressed?
Yeah, so at first, like I said before, I have a long history of family members who have mental health issues. So I was the person who knew so much about it and was helping everyone. And then, I went through a huge transformation with myself, and I went down into the darkest time of my life for a very long time. So I was depressed. I was anxious. I was everything. I didn't understand why I was a completely different version of myself. And so I started going to therapy and doing everything I could to help, and writing. Just I didn't know how to explain what am I trying to say? I didn't know how to make sense of why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I couldn't pull myself out of the hole, like Maria said. But so I just started writing all of the things I was feeling, and then I was reading them to my therapist, and he was kind of talking me through it, and it was how I made sense of the emotions. And then slowly, it was how I kind of came back to reality. It brought me to the here and the now, and it put me in the present, being able to write and reflect on how I was feeling. And eventually I was able to pull myself out of it. But it was a long, I'm squishing it together, but this was a long couple of months, longer than that I just, until I got to poetry. But yeah.
Amazing. So which means it is possible to be depressed, but there is a way out of it. And for you, poetry, or I'll say the art, helped you to manage that successfully, right?
Yes. And I think it's very situational. It's different for everybody. For me, I think what I was going through and how I got myself out of it is a little bit different, because I was able to recognize what was happening because I have a history of it. So for me, I was like, oh no, I was still in that place of, I don't know why I feel this way. I can't get out of it. But I was a little more self-aware than others. So thank God for that. But it's different for everyone. But yeah, poetry was my savior in this whole mental health.
Amazing. That is really interesting. So Dr. Ezie, this brings me back to you. Are there treatment for depression for real, aside from art?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the best treatment for any, I think diagnosis when it comes to psychiatry is multimodal. And so what I mean by that is, yeah, there are medications that we have, right? Like SSRIs work fairly well. People probably have heard of some of them, like Zoloft and Prozac, and these things can work really well for some people. But then they don't work really well at all for others, right? And we don't really know a lot of the reason why. Some of it seems to be the context, so the social context of the person. If it's a negative context, right, it's really hard to heal in the environment that has caused the trauma, or the environment that has caused you to become depressed in the first place, right? A lot of the time when someone goes inpatient into a hospital, why are they getting better? It's a lot of it is because we remove them out of the context that they were in. Now they're in the hospital for 2 weeks and they might feel better. We might give them some medications, but if they go back into the exact same environment, the chances of them coming back are really high. And we see that a lot, right? So I think having a psychiatrist or having someone that can prescribe a medication can certainly be helpful. And I don't want to discredit that. Obviously that's part of my job, right? So I do think there's some value there. Having a therapist, if your psychiatrist doesn't also do therapy, having a therapist, someone that you can talk through these things with, that's trained to really hold space for it and help you navigate it, I think is extremely helpful. And in clinical trials where they've actually studied this, the best result you get is when you have both some medication as well as therapy. Now, on top of that, I think there's definitely things like music and mindfulness, which also you do much better if you have those things on top of the other things that we talked about, as opposed to any of one of those things alone. So I think really having a multi-pronged approach where you're approaching it from all these different angles is the best way, to treat it. But there are people who, are can have their depression treated, and can go on to live like very, very functional lives and actually find fulfillment in life. But it is a process, and it takes you also as a person really being willing to engage and also look at yourself, right? Like, what are the things that how is the way that I'm processing my environment and processing my experiences also contributing to the way that I'm feeling, and what are ways, that I can work with that. So, and again, therapy and all those things help you navigate that as well. So I do think there are treatments out there. And I mean, in really extreme cases, for instance, there's also things like ECT, which I think electroconvulsive therapy, which has like a very scary sort of background in sort of the popular, in the general community. But really, I've seen people who have intractable depression, no medications work, no therapy for years has worked, and they do better on ECT. So it's another thing, that can work. So I think there are tools out there, but it really requires someone to be really, really engaged, and that can often be very difficult for people in marginalized communities, people of African descent, who, again, these systems weren't necessarily made for their wellness, right? Like, when you look at who the psychiatrists were that came up, invented the field of psychiatry, who invented the medical system, there weren't a lot of Black and brown people involved in that, not really at all. And so I think it's harder for us to navigate that system, get access to that system, and then get equitable treatment within that system. So that's an additional layer, I think, of difficulty. But I think there are resources out there that can help, and that, we should seek out when we're struggling to function.
Ooh, that is really amazing. Thank you so much. Maria, I'm coming back to you right now. Before we go to mindfulness, like for real, I want you to touch about postpartum depression. You want to touch quickly on that, please?
Okay. Postpartum depression?
Yes.
Okay. Well, postpartum depression usually has to do with a woman giving birth to her child. Not all women go through that postpartum depression, but it can be a chemical imbalance that could have caused it. It could be a number of things that could cause, postpartum depression. It could even be the environment. Okay, so what's going on? So it could be a number of things. The important thing is that a woman, after she gives birth, it's so important for her not to be by herself. In different cultures, especially in my own culture, the Latino culture, a woman has to take care of herself for at least 42 days. And she's usually with somebody that's caring for her and for her child, or that's receiving that help from somebody. Because of course she does need help, and her body is going through those changes where it's trying to get back to normalcy because it's no longer pregnant. Now your body is no longer with that body that was asking for that time in your womb, or that nourishment. Now there's a disconnection now, and a connection in another way, or that has to be taken care of in another way, which is bonding with that child. So here you are trying to heal while having to take care of another human being, and that your whole life has to adjust to a new way of life. So, it's really important that that woman has someone there that she can talk to. It doesn't just necessarily have to be a therapist, but a mother, a friend, somebody, a husband, So
but is
it's
it
very
possible
important that woman.
Is it possible to be going through that and you don't know you're going through it? Is it possible?
It's possible. It's possible, thinking that it's normal. But that's why it's so important to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, how are we going to be aware of what's going on?
Hmm.
You know?
Thank you so much, Maria. All right, so we already know that it is possible to get treated or manage these symptoms. Now, this takes me to mindfulness, and I'm going to talk to Dr. Azie about mindfulness, then I come to Natalia to share another poetry with us. Dr. Azie, what is mindfulness? How can mindfulness be used to manage depression?
Yeah. So mindfulness is a way of being that allows you to have a truer experience that maps onto um, to an ability to navigate experiences that you have. And so, just to delve in a little bit more about what I mean by that, it's like in any given moment, we're having some experience. And what our brain is doing is taking that experience and it's interpreting it in some way.
Mm.
And largely, the way that's interpreting it is based on the past. And so, most of us spend our lives using information from the past and projecting it into the future, right? And so mindfulness says, well, what if we step outside of that mechanism a little bit? Let's not worry too much about the past. Let's not worry too much about the future. Let's just be here right now with what's happening here. And how do I now differently experience what's happening right now when I get outside of my mind a little bit and get more into the present moment? Because the mind is always either in the past or the future. The mind never deals with right now. And so mindfulness is a way of being that puts me right now in the center of the moment and then asks me to navigate my experience from there instead of projecting into the future or relying so much on the past to interpret what's happening right now. And so there's a set of practices that one can do that helps to train themselves to be more in that way of being. And a lot of when we look at depression, right, there's people don't say like, I think depressed. They say, I feel depressed, right? So a lot of it is a feeling it's an embodied feeling. It's something that like, I don't feel like getting up. I don't feel like I have the energy. I feel sad. But then if you look more at like, why do I feel that way? A lot of the time it comes from what's happening in the brain, what's happening in the mind, right? Different experiences that I've had in the past, how that's affected me is now in this present moment, shaping the way that I'm experiencing everything around me. When I have anxiety, based on the things that have happened in the past and based on the way my mind works, I'm in the future. I'm worried about things that haven't happened yet, right? And so mindfulness is about kind of like getting out of the future and getting out of the past and just being right now. And when you do that, actually, it really changes the way that you're able to experience kind of what's happening to you in that moment. It allows you a little bit of space to navigate things that may not feel bad, right? Like we said, one can be sad, but that doesn't necessarily have to mean that one will become depressed. You know, one can know that there are risks to the future without having general anxiety disorder. And so mindfulness is like a set of tools that allows one to do that.
Thank you so much. I think we didn't hear that, but I think it was an excellent thing. Thank you so much, Dr. Azie. So Natalia, you want to share one more poetry with us before we run up the program?
Sure. So this one's called Something Unbeautiful. And yeah, so I sat down to write something beautiful. I wanted to write from my heart. I wanted to prove that the stars could align, but when I tried, I didn't know where to start. I'm dying to write about living, but sadly, I don't understand it. I tried describing a firefly, it flew by, and all I felt was abandoned. I am now empty-handed, and I cannot stand it. I don't understand this. I'm begging, please. I tried to prescribe myself hopefulness. When that didn't work, I tried faith. When that seemed to fail, I fell to my knees, not quite sure to who, but I prayed. I cried out to fate, no answer. I waited, no knock at the door. Drowning in tears, I want flowers. So why is life handing me swords? I screamed out for truth, and it answered. Are you sure? This is going to hurt. Fed up with the lies, too tired, I sighed. I know, but it's time that I heard. So I sat and I listened. And now I'm seeing the light. It was fight or flight, and I chose fight. It's going to be all right. I said it's going to be all right.
It's going to be all right. I love that. Thank you so much, Natalia. That is so beautiful.
Thank you.
That is so deep. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Maria,
Yes.
So let's look at this. If I've been feeling sad for about 1 week now or 2 weeks, and I try to talk to somebody, and finally I get to you as a counselor, what are the things you're going to do to help me get out of this, or how to manage my depression? I don't even know if it's sadness or depression. I just know I'm not feeling happy. How are you going to help me if I come to you?
Okay, well, my first question would be is what's causing the sadness?
Okay.
Well, how long have you been feeling like this?
Okay.
Um, and then I would try to get some answers. Sometimes when I get the I don't know, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to let you think about it. Think about how long this has been going on. Why have you been feeling like this? What are you thinking about?
Hmm. So can you help me if I'm not willing to get help? Is it possible to help somebody who doesn't even accept that they have a problem?
No, no, not at all. If I'm telling you I don't have a problem, this is the way it is, and this is you. The only thing I can do is guide you and teach you. I'm not here to try to get you that help if you're not willing, especially if you're telling me I don't believe in therapy, because I've heard this before. Oh, I don't believe in this. Okay, so then what are you doing here? Oh, because my psychiatrist told me that I need help.
Mm.
Okay, well, I don't want you here because your psychiatrist, your mother, your sister told you that you need to come here because you need help. You come here because you believe in this, because you're at least giving it a try, and because you're open to this. If
Okay.
you're not open to it, then this is about you. This is not about me.
Mhm.
This is about how open you can be. I
Yeah.
remember having a client that was telling me after our session, she's like, you know what, you told me you would give me hope, and I didn't feel that hope from you. And I said, I don't remember ever saying that,
I'm gonna
because
give you
hope
hope.
does not come from me. It comes from inside. Yeah. It comes from you, not from me. It's something that you work with. It's something that's in you.
Okay.
So the
So
first
it's a
thing in
two-way
that
thing.
person is that they have to be open to this.
Okay. That's good. Thank you so much. So Dr. Az, so when we talk about depression, is there like an age limit, or from 5 to 3, you cannot get depressed between, is there like an age limit to depression?
Yeah. So, I think that there's not a strict limit because people develop in different ways. So, I've seen, adolescents as young as 11 and 12
Hmm.
who have sort of met the criteria for depression. Now, at a certain age, we might not give them that diagnosis. We might, and the way that it manifests might be different in young age. So, like, the way that depression might look in an adolescent might be more like behavioral disruption, right?
Mm.
And so,
Mhm.
we might sort of give them a diagnosis that sort of more characterizes the fact that the behavior that they are engaging in is disruptive or defiant. But a lot of those children sometimes will go on to meet the criteria for depression. And so I think we certainly can see it in adolescence. We know that the rates of suicide are rising,
Mm.
in adolescents and teenagers. And so I see a lot of young people struggling, with functioning in this society.
Wow, that is really sad. That is really sad. All right, so we're going to round up the program today, and we've learned so much. We've learned so much about depression, the symptoms, the things to watch out for, how to know when you are sad, how to know when it exceeds a certain days, you need to seek help. And from this program, we've been able to learn that there are so many treatment options out there. You need to seek help, speak with somebody. If you don't want to speak to a therapist, speak with somebody about it. If you've been feeling sad, you've been feeling down, the things that interest you doesn't interest you anymore, you don't want to eat, and you feel that this thing is consistent, it's not as a result of something that just come, maybe you're just grieving over a loss of someone and it just goes by. Everybody feels sad once in a while, but when you see that this thing is persistent, and you definitely need to seek help, because there is help there. You can use mindfulness. Dr. Azie explained how we can use mindfulness. Natalia shared with us how she used poetry to get out and manage her depression. Maria has told us a lot of stuff, but it has to come from you. You really need that help because there is help out there. All right, on a closing note, Dr. Ezie, you have something you want to share before we round up?
Yeah. So I want to share two things. One, like I said, art is really important to me. So I just do a little bit of a song called For Pain from my project Unlikely Stories. The other thing I want to talk about is the music mindfulness study. So this is a study that's being run out of my lab at Yale. And it's for people, in the community who are struggling with symptoms of anxiety and or depression and stress. We have an intervention that's all virtual that kind of can get you into learning mindfulness using music as sort of a way to get you into mindfulness. And so if you're interested in that, you can follow us on Instagram at Music Mindfulness Study. And you can just click the link in the bio to try to sign up for the study. You can also send a text to 52855, and that'll also get you signed up. And then we'll contact you to see if you're eligible for the study. But this is a good way if you're struggling with those symptoms and you want sort of to get access to learning how to do mindfulness. The Music Mindfulness Study, is for you. So then I'm just going to end with a few bars from my song For Pain. I woke up this morning feeling good, yeah. Even though we still living in the hood, yeah. I still give Jah thanks for the good, yeah. And I'm just trying to live like I should, yeah. The news said the sky is falling. I told my daughter, don't worry, darling. We have the ancient recipe. They said love was our frequency and we'll all be free someday. Yeah, we'll all be free someday. Now put your hands to the sky if you feel the vibe, and may you really find your peace of mind. I told my brother that the pain was the key, yeah. Before we didn't know what we could really be, yeah. I had to struggle just to find a bit of peace, yeah. We had to study up on all of the beliefs, yeah. Why do we take these steps? Why do we take these breaths? How can I right these wrongs? How could I be so wrong? That's why we write these songs. I was just trying to find relief, yeah. I drink a little bit, I go Chief Keef, yeah. But I want to hear the message rocking in the streets, yeah. Because we the sources of the answers that we seek, yeah. We the sources of the answers that we need, yeah. I woke up this morning feeling good, yeah. Even though we still living in the hood, yeah. Still give Jah thanks for the good, yeah. And I'm just trying to live like I should, yeah. The news said the sky is falling. I told my daughter, don't worry, darling. We have the ancient recipe. They said love was our frequency and we'll all be free someday. Yeah, we'll all be free someday.
Oh, thank you so much. Whoa, I'll be free someday.
Very nice, beautiful.
That is really beautiful. All right, Natalia, over to you. You have something to say before we go?
Something to say? I don't have another poem, but I do want to say, sorry, expressing yourself is really important, and it's also important to know you're not alone. I think that's something that everyone needs to hear at least once. If they're going through anything, there's someone out there who will understand you, who will be there to listen. If not, write it down, speak it back to yourself, and just hold on to the fact that there are people who are out there that will support you and help guide you in the direction of healing and hope. And like Maria said, you can't help anyone until they want to help themselves. So just sending out prayers and hope to everyone who is in that space of I don't know how to help myself yet. That everybody finds that peace within them to climb out of the hole. But I'm just happy to have been a part of this, and I hope everybody out there who needs help gets help and can find their way to the light again.
Thank you so much. Hi, Maria. You want to say something to your people before we leave?
Yes, it was a pleasure being in this group. I enjoyed it very much. I love listening to the poetry, to the rap music. It was so cool. I loved it. Getting a lot out of the psychiatry as far as the medication. I just wanted to add that a lot of times our patients believe that it's only medication And in therapy, there's also not just mindfulness, but there's so many other interventions, so many other therapeutic techniques that they can use, such as exercising, going out into a beach, just taking a walk, just doing different things that's good for them, that it's in high vibration with positive energy, that is so positive that it can boost those chemicals, those happy chemicals, like the endorphins, the dopamine, the serotonin, and the other one that I can't remember right now. I can't remember it right now. I know it's 4, but but if we can believe that it's not just medication, but that there's other stuff that go along with it, that it's going to be okay.
Yes.
And that we can combat or fight through this and be healthy and happy.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you so much. So you've all heard Maria, Natalia, Dr. Ezie saying there is hope for you. All you need to do is tap into the healing side of life. Just strive, do something else, try something else. If you've tried therapy doesn't work, try exercise. If exercise doesn't work, try mindfulness. Don't just give up on yourself. And if you also need help, we have this helpline from SAMHSA. It's 1-800-662-HELP. It is 1-800-662-4357. If you need someone to talk to, you please call this number. You will definitely have somebody to share your experience with. You are not alone. If you look all to the world, you will see 1 or 2 persons going through that same thing you are going through. You are not alone. Don't give up on yourself. There is hope. My name is Oluwatosin Olakanyi, and it's been a wonderful time. Thank you, Dr. Ezie, for coming. Thank you, Natalia, for sharing with us. Thank you, Maria, for coming today. It's been an amazing time. Please visit our website, www.motherdrumhaf.org. That is Mother Drum Healing Arts Foundation. We are here to help you. Please, there are resources on our website also. If you need to reach out Dr. Ezie, Dr. Ezie is going to, if you need Dr. Ezie's information, please go to our website, and you can check out Dr. Ezie on Instagram, on Facebook. Natalia is also on Facebook. Maria is on Facebook. Please reach out to these people. They are here to support you. You are not alone. Have a good one, guys. Have a wonderful time. See you next month.
Bye.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for having us.